Hello guys, welcome to the next episode in this Mercedes Sprinter van conversion. In today's video we're going to be making and installing the wall cupboards throughout the van. There's quite a lot to get through, so this might be a little bit of a lengthy video, but I know from the comments that you've been leaving me that you like all the details, so I'll try and keep as much in as I can, but try not to make it too long. First we're going to be building the carcasses, and then we'll get on to making the doors and then fitting the hinges. So we've got lots to do, so let's get cracking. I've kept hold of the template that we used to cut this kitchen panel dividing wall out. I've chopped the bottom of it off, and now I know that this profile is exactly the same as this kitchen dividing wall. We can cut another piece of furniture board using this template, and this will go at the other end of the bedroom, and it will mean that I'll have matching end panels. Then all we need to do is cut the face and the bottom shelf and the individual dividers, and I should be able to use this for both sides, for both sets of wall cupboards. To keep these cables up out of the way in the back of this cupboard, I've just shot some cable ties into the ply lining with a staple gun, and it's just going to be enough just to hold these up out of the way. This piece of furniture board was cut out of the front bulkhead, and this is just wide enough to get these end panels for the bedroom wall cupboards out of. I've squared up this edge with a straight line and run the circular saw down there, so I've got a nice straight edge, and then with the T-square I've just clamped this straight edge here, so I know that this angle here is exactly 90 degrees. Just going to rip off this little bit of scrap, then we can place our template on those two straight edges and then pencil round the other two shapes. I know probably nobody will notice it, but there's a distinct book match in this pattern on this laminate, so I'm going to use that as a reference point to cut these end panels, because that same book match, if we have a look at the other end of the wardrobe, you'll see that same book match is there, and it's about 55-60 mil from the edge of this end panel. So if I position the other end panel in the same place, these two patterns are roughly going to match. This board really does cut nice and clean and crisp. So here's our end panel template, clamped down to these two straight edges here and here, and then we'll just pencil round this curve and pencil round this curve, and then we'll cut those two edges with the jigsaw. This belt sander I built from plans from Matthias Wandel's website. I'll put a link in the description if you want to buy the plans yourself. I built this completely from scratch, and it's perfect for getting these corners lovely and round. So this is the end panel for the wall cupboards in the bedroom. Now we've got to cut a shelf to go in the bottom here out of some more furniture board, and then we'll make the face frame, but we'll make that out of some PSE timber, and then I'll probably paint that black, and then we'll just put the doors over the top of it. For the face frame for the wall cupboards, I'm going to be using this PSE. This is nominally 2x1, but it comes up about 1.5 by 3/4, or 44mm by 18. I've selected some pieces which have got a nice straight close grain, and obviously without too many knots, so they're nice and straight. Let's just get these cut to length on the miter saw. I never rely on the factory edge that comes on these timbers when you buy them from the DIY store. I always just trim the end off to start with. That way I know I've got a nice clean square edge, and then we'll measure from there. To make sure the top and bottom rails of this face frame are all the same length, I've just got them all clamped together in the miter saw. They're all nice and flush on the end here. And then I've got my pencil mark right just touching the edge of the blade, and then I can cut all four at the same time. We're going to be fixing the face frame to the furniture board using some pocket holes so you don't see any screws on the outside. Now the way you set up a Kreg jig depends on the thickness of the wood that you're actually putting the pocket hole into. So this wood is about 18mm or 3/4. So on the side here you can see we've got gauge marks. So I've set this at the 19mm mark. It's got a little pin here which goes in a hole. And then as well as that, you also need to set the depth of the drill bit. This goes in the gauge on the back of the Kreg jig, and again I've also set this to 19mm. That will make sure that the screw comes out right in the centre of this thickness of material. This handy little Kreg station I actually built myself out of some 18mm plywood that I had left over. I've actually got a video for this on my channel. I'll put a link up here in the top corner and a link in the description, and if you want a set of free plans, watch that video, and then there's a link to a PDF document. You can make one of these yourself. I'm just going to do a little test with these pocket hole and Kreg screws on these couple of bits of scrap furniture board just to see how strong this joint's going to be. Oh yeah, that's really strong. You never pull them out. Yeah, that'll be brilliant. This section of the end panel is curved to match the slope of the roof. So the top part of the face frame also needs to be cut at the same angle. So I can offer up this upright onto our end panel, and then I can mark the end of the board, and then I'll set the mitre gauge so it cuts the same angle. I've just kicked the mitre saw over by a couple of degrees just to match the slope of that cut. There we can see that's perfectly parallel to that line, so I'll just nip a little bit more off. This face frame measures 1660mm long. I'm going to have 3 cupboard doors. I want them all exactly the same, so I'm going to need a central divider in this face frame at 553mm from either end. And then that dimension there should also be 553, which it is. I'm going to fix this face frame together with some glue and brads. When the glue's gone off, that'll be plenty strong enough, and the brads are there really just to hold it in place until the glue dries. Use the square just to make sure that it's in the right place before you fire the brads. And carry on down, make the rest of the frames up the same way. We've cut the matching end panels in the furniture board for the far end of the wall cupboards. Now I want to make the intermediate dividers. I'm only going to use some 18mm plywood for those. They're not going to be on show, they're going to be inside the cupboard, so no need to waste any more furniture board. So I've got the template that we used for the end panels, and what I've done is marked out the bottom shelf, I've marked out the front door position, and then I've marked out the position of where the battens are going to go. So what we'll do is we'll use this same template, we'll trim it down to these new dimensions, and then we'll use that for cutting out the plywood. Got our dividing template now marked out onto each of these pieces of 18mm plywood. I'm just going to cut these out with a jigsaw. We've cut the cupboard dividers with the jigsaw and sanded any of the splinters off the edges. We've cut these notches in the side here to accept these battens. The idea being that these battens now will push in there nice and snug. We'll put a screw right into this piece of ply, that'll hold it really secure, and then what we'll do is we can then drill through these battens into the ply lining of the van or into the battens that I put on the roof. That's going to make this whole structure really solid. Because this back edge of the wall cupboards is angled, the batten that sits on the back here, I'm going to bevel the back edge of this batten to match that angle. So take this mitre gauge, place it on the bottom of the cupboard, bring that in to match that angle, nip that up, and then we can transfer that to the table saw and set the blade up to match this perfectly. So I've just tilted the table saw blade over to match that angle, and then we're just going to run those battens through just to bevel that edge. We'll just run an offcut through first just to check that we've got the setup right. I need to come just a fraction of a millimetre closer to the blade. Run the same piece again. That looks good. You can see that bevel on there. I've just got it to come right to this edge here. Now you can see it starting to come together. We've got the face frame clamped into the central dividers, and then what I'm going to do now is just apply some glue to those joints, put a pilot hole in, and then drive some screws. Before applying any paint or varnish, and after sanding, I always make sure I wipe down with a tack cloth just to get rid of any of the last bits of dust that are left on there. All of the trim on our cupboards is black, and any of the gaps between the cupboard doors, I don't really want to see this white woodwork, so I'm just going to give this face frame a little coat of some matte black paint. Can screw these wall cupboard carcasses into the van now. They attach mainly to the ply lining, so I've pre-drilled, countersunk and put the screws in already just to make it easier for when we get up there. I can just drive them in, and then I've also pre-drilled and countersunk screws for the furniture board. Again, it just makes it easier when we get there, you know, you don't need another pair of hands. In case you're wondering, I'm not checking that it's level, I'm just making sure the batten's straight. Right, that's 12 screws in the back, 3 in the ceiling and a couple in the furniture board, and already I think you'd pull the van over before you pulled that off the wall, so that's not going anywhere. got the end panel for the wall cupboard. It's already pre-trimmed with the PVC trim, and then I've got 4 screws here ready to go. We're just going to clamp that in position, drive these 4 screws in, and that will secure that end panel. We're going to be cutting the furniture board on the table saw. We've taken out the old rip saw blade, which is just basically used for cutting construction wood, plywood, and then we've purchased a brand new Freud Pro blade, which is an 80 tooth blade, which is far better for cutting laminates, and we'll get a lot less chip out with this type of blade. And obviously as a new blade it'll be nice and sharp. I'm going to square up this edge on the end of this board, and at the same time I'm going to put like a 1 or 2 degree bevel on it, because when we butt this board up to another board, that little slight bevel will just help bring this edge in closer, because there won't be anything hindering it from being square to the other edge. There, you can just about make out that 1 degree chamfer that I put on the end of that board, and then if you look underneath, that's brought that edge in really tight. There's absolutely no gaps there whatsoever. And you'll never see that chamfer there, because of course we're going to router this edge and then put that black plastic push-on trim over it. I'm going to be installing some LED strip lights underneath all of the wall cupboards. And rather than just stick the LED tape to the underside of the cupboard, what I've managed to find is this little recessed channel. So this aluminium channel will get recessed into the underside of the cupboard, and then it comes with like an opaque diffuser which clips in after you've put the tape in there. It will be completely recessed and fairly flush, and I think that'll give it a really neat finish. I've got the dovetail bit set up in the trim router. I've set the depth to exactly the same depth as that aluminium channel. I've got a straight edge clamped to my bottom shelf, and I'm just going to run it along here to create that groove. I'm going to take the opportunity while I've got it, this dovetailed slot here for the LED lights, to conceal a few countersunk screws. So I'm just going to put a pilot hole with a countersink here. That'll get screwed into the cupboard frame, and then it'll be covered by the LED strip. So here is the LED strip that we're going to put in this recess. These are a 4 colour LED, so we can get multiple colours, and with that app on the smartphone we can actually get infinite variable colours on this. So this is going to be really nice for the bedroom end. We can change the colour on the underside of these cabinets and change the mood. So what we need to do now is roll this out. This is obviously going to have to go through a hole in the shelf. I can't get that connector through, so what we'll have to do is we'll have to cut the LED strip and then feed the whole of the strip through the hole. Because we've got this 4-pin plug on the end of the LED tape here, I'm just having to feed it down through this hole in the back of the cupboard, which comes out directly into the strip underneath. Just got doors to hang, but basically that's the finished wall cupboards. So you can see those battens at the back screwed to the ply lining. Obviously those battens are in turn screwed to these dividers. And then that face frame that we made up that we painted black, that'll be where the doors are hung on, and catches at the bottom. Pretty minimalist, but really strong. And plenty of storage space. I may put a couple of shelves in these just to divide the space up and make it a bit more usable. I think that's a convenient point to break this video. We've packed a lot into that 20 minutes, and I hope you found those tips to be useful to you when you're doing your own van conversion. If you have used any of my tips and tricks and found my videos to be useful, then please do give me a shout out on social media. I want to say a huge thanks to everybody that's taken the time to leave me a comment. I really enjoy reading all of those, and I can't thank you enough for all of the support that you've given this channel. If you want to purchase some of the tools that I've been using in this video, then I've put links in the description below. Don't worry, you won't have to wait long for the next video. I've already edited the second part of this cupboard build, where we're making the cupboard doors and hanging the hinges and finishing them off, and they'll both be released on the same day. So it just remains for me to say thanks very much for watching, and I'll leave you with this little light show. Cheers!